Hello, everybody. Welcome to Music Meltdown. This has been in the works for a little bit here. I have Vanessa here. She's got a channel. Let it be. Check it out. It's better than mine. There you go. So here we go. We're doing Deep Purple. Cat out of the bag. This is gonna be tough for at least like half this video. But how are you feeling on Deep Purple coming into things? What was your expertise in this, I suppose?
Before, I'd heard most of like the big ones. I'd heard the Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV era mostly. I think I'd heard one of Mark One, and I'd never heard anything past 1984. So the stuff I was new to was like not usually what people consider the best stuff, I guess we can say.
I knew everything up to Perpendicular except for the ones that people forget exist. So,
Which is a
um,
bunch in there before perpendicular.
I mean, I can just say the late 80s.
Yeah,
So,
early 90s, yeah.
I knew the initial run up except for House of Blue Light and Slaves and Masters, which you're gonna see that's for good fucking reason. But so yes, 23 albums is a big catalog. For sake of
Yeah.
fairness, we're gonna go three at a time. However, 23 albums. So let's talk about Turning to Crime. This album is dog shit. Totally boring and bland blues with Gillan being awful throughout it. I have nothing noteworthy or enjoyable here. Don't jive with it one bit. I have it at a star and a half. This stunk.
Well, I don't know that I'm quite that angry about it, but it's yeah, it's not very good. It's like it starts with a different take on Seven and Seven Is, and at first I was kind of like, well, that's interesting. I wouldn't expect them to do that song. The keyboard is an interesting choice on that song. I don't know, especially where it has like a very much more of a rough roots. Like I don't think that they did the best treatment of it. It was a little too sanitized for the spirit of the song for me. And my impression during the first few songs of this album, with their current sound and that whole Bob Ezrin era that they're in, it's just too clean and at odds with the spirit of a lot of these songs. And that really clashed. Um, their rendition of Let the Good Times Roll is a bit of a show tune kind of thing, and that was pretty bad. And the Battle of New Orleans cover was straight up kind of goofy. And cover albums are always tough, especially when they come from the latter part of the career. It often feels like a throwaway or a lack of other ideas. And I can't say that this album is any different than that. So there's really no reason for me to ever listen to this again. And yeah, it's just not good, but it's forgettable, basically. So I gave it 2 stars. I didn't quite go as low, but it was, I will never listen to it again.
No
Unless
way.
for some reason I decide to do this all over again. Then I guess I'll have to. But
Indeed. I'm really curious. After we're done here, I'm gonna watch the Sea of Tranquility review. I gotta hear what he had to say on that. I'm very curious. But anyways, let's
probably
get
different than what we said, I would get.
what
Just,
there's a chance.
yeah.
There's a chance. All right, so I'm gonna blow your mind. I'm gonna be talking about a lot of later period Deep Purple records coming up.
Hmm.
The one at 22nd, however, I have is Infinite, which also stinks. It's the same boring, tired rock and roll they've been pumping out for a decade now. They evidently just have ran out of ideas since Perpendicular. I mean, I'd argue the last record where they even thought was Bananas, but we'll get there. It's just not a fun listen for me. I have it at 2 stars. And just what the hell was Roadhouse Blues? They never really were big bluesy. Like the best you got was maybe some of the Coverdale stuff. But it's just they always throw some of these like bluesier tracks on these later albums and they don't work. So it's like, what are we doing? I don't get it. 21 for me, I'm going with The House of Blue Light. Who is this album for? It has these weird moments at points, but at its core, it's just really boring hard rock. I don't like some of the synth touches on here, and the songs are entirely unremarkable. I just don't know who this album was designed for. Even at this time, like, I feel like you'll get harder, more interesting stuff if you just listen to the metal that's out there, which isn't that different from what they're already doing. I don't know. If you love the purple organ guitar combo, you might get something out of it, but I just think it kind of blows. 2 stars once again, not a big fan. And at number 20, I'm going Rapture of the Deep. Boring ass generic Deep Purple record with awful vocal processing on Gillan, which is really the crux of most of these later period records. He's either lost his ability to sing or they just aren't confident in him, so they're constantly fucking up his vocals with different effects and whatnot. It's just not fun. 2.5 stars. These records are just nothing burgers, not enjoyable at all, I feel.
Well, we're gonna have a bit of a different order here. I mean, I don't love any of those, but they're not. Well, one we do share one there. So my number 22 is also Whoosh. Whoosh. Terrible title, but anyway, yeah, there's not a lot of stuff to say about the music on this album. Ian's vocals are sounding quite rough at times, especially on We're All the Same in the Dark. It's like he was straining on that song. That was pretty rough. Some pretty goofy lyrics, as we see a lot of the time. Like this one line that I noted, "Baby, won't you be my friend and love me right until the end? You know, the fashion come and fashion go, melting like the summer snow." And what does that mean? Like, doesn't mean anything. But I don't know that I think it's like totally a horrible album, but it's just like a lot of the stuff in the latter part of the career, it just feels largely inessential. Like I don't know why you would choose to listen to it even. Like Man Alive is an example of a song that we didn't need. There's some weird processing on it that sounds tinny and robotic, which completely minimizes any impact that they were going for because it felt like a song where they were trying to go for something and it just didn't land. A modern cover of And the Address from their first album is like totally unnecessary. I mean, it's not even Ian Gillan wasn't even there, so I don't know why they're doing that. It's just so difficult to have much to really say about this album in this era. I'm not really sure how much it even has to offer fans at this point. Like they've had better showcases of this sound, and it's just sounding more and more tired all the time as they go along. So I just think that there's meant to be some theme to this album too, and that totally falls flat. I occasionally pick up on it, but I also struggle to care about it. So it's a 2.5 star album. Number 21 is Bananas. I don't, there's been a bit of defense among people we know, and I don't totally get that. But anyway, House of Pain is a fine opener. It's a bit generic. Sun Goes Down has weird production, and I don't like this producer like on this album or the next one. I can't put my finger on it, but it seems like they're going for this sweeping and powerful sound, but it ends up muted and fuzzy. And when they're going for big moments, it doesn't help that Gillan's vocals feel buried at times. Like I just don't think it sounds very good. I don't like the addition of Beth Hart on Haunted. I don't really think she adds anything, and I just don't like how she sounds on there. And just doesn't really fit. The song itself kind of reminds me of Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith, and I just can't unhear that. Not that I like that song better than this song, so it's not even like a complimentary thing. I'm not anti-strings by any means, but it just feels tacked on here. Silver Tongue has weird glitchy noises throughout that are more distracting than anything. And it doesn't really add to the song at all. It's kind of annoying. Doesn't really help that that song sucks anyway. The lyrics on Pictures of Innocence are pretty goofy. Again, a common theme. Never a word doesn't really suit them at all. It easily could have been cut from the album, I think. And I'm not sure that I necessarily think that this is like this all-time bad album, but it's just a tired album. And the energy that I heard on the previous two albums before this is noticeably lacking. And there's just some cringier choices at times that detract, but I don't know that they're super overt, but you can hear them there. And it's that early 2000s sort of curse of these older bands trying to be a little more trendy and it doesn't totally land. And the biggest thing that stands out for me about this album that it just feels like they're going through the motions, which makes the whole thing end up being very in one ear out the other most of the time. And I guess that makes the negatives stand out more because it's just kind of blah. So it's another 2.5. Number 20 for me is their most recent one, Equals One. Right off the bat, I'm not too sure about the first song. I find it clunky, and the solo section feels really shoehorned in. A bit on the side seems to be a bit of a modern take on Lola by the Kinks, but it's a pretty blah song, and it's like, I don't know if you're the right person to be doing this. And I always brace myself for a little cringe when I hear Ian Gillan use a woman's name in a song because it never ends up being a good time. I saw a review for this that said that his voice sounded richer than it had in years, and I don't know that I hear that at all. I actually thought it sounded worse than it had before, and a bit more labored, even perhaps, than the last few years. And maybe it is a bit richer because at times it did seem a bit thin on other recent albums. I don't know, but I don't think that's better. And to be fair, we all change a bit as we age. You can't expect the same vocals that we heard in the 70s, but it's getting rough. And as far as their new guitarist, Simon McBride goes, I can't say I hear a lot of from him that thrills me. His solos seem to be kind of in a similar vein to each other, and I can't say they really engage me much. So I don't know if the issue is that they're too blazing for the songs, but I just don't know that they totally fit. They're not bad either. It's just again, it's just this state of meh. It all falls in the similar realm of the last few albums where it's not bad, it's just kind of flat and boring. I admire them for continuing to rock out and do their thing. I do. I mean, nobody wants to stop necessarily, but there's just not much here that I really want to return to, which is really how these albums have felt for a long time. They could be much, much, much worse, but they could also be much better. So, another 2.5.
Yeah. Different records, but very similar feelings, I think.
Yeah.
And we're gonna keep the 2.5 train coming. We got a
Yeah.
lot of these. Number 19, a record that is very dubiously even a Deep Purple album. I have Slaves and Masters. Just call this fucking Rainbow, man. I mean, what are we doing? This album's dull as hell, though. Aside from some cool guitar playing from Blackmore at points, there's nothing here. Really average songs, unremarkable performances, and Joe and Turner, even within Rainbow, isn't a very captivating frontman. You're there for Blackmore in that era, and even then, that's not the best Blackmore. So they've just got a lot better. 2.5. This is possibly the album I'm the most curious to see where it falls for you because I think I have it relatively low, despite its shaky reputation. I have Who Do We Think We Are at 18. Um, I thought you were Deep Purple. What are we doing here? All the magic from this era is gone, and I'm not even the biggest Ian Gillan fan. Like, I'll just throw it out there now. I think Ian Gillan is pretty overrated. Like, I like him as a vocalist, but I mean, he's number three in this band. So, spoiler alert for that. And I mean, he's a shitty writer. Just transparently, Ian Gillan is not a good lyricist. At his best, you're getting like generic rock motifs. At the worst, you're getting songs like Mary Long, which are not ideal. And especially stuff in the later catalog is fucking tough. I don't know. This is just a nothing burger of 70s hard rock, though. You get a couple good organ parts, and even a well-renowned song like Woman from Tokyo doesn't stand up to like, it's no Fireball, it's no fucking Highway Star, it's none of their better tracks. 2.5. I think that this is one of the biggest drop-offs from like an all-time classic record to just like, who do we think we are? Genuinely. Now what? It's another really whatever Deep Purple record. Gillan sounds better when the vocal production isn't shit. The songwriting just isn't very noteworthy though. This is the issue with Deep Purple is they operate in this later period with such a degree of adequacy. They are consistently content and never evolving. Hence why everything is so fucking mediocre. Do something. I'm not saying what you do is good. I mean, bananas exists. It's not good, but it's higher for me. But like, at least they're trying stuff there. This is just like, you might as well be a bar band with records like this. Like, genuinely. Now, what are you going to do to evolve your career? 2.5 stars. Shitty album titles, by the way. Like, what are some of these titles? Now, what? I mean, equals one. What are we doing? I'm later period Deep Purple left me, if nothing else, very confused just as to why this band exists. So I got more 2.5s coming soon.
Yeah, there's a lot of rough stuff here to get through. So my number 19 is Infinite. Starts off with some of the goofiest lyrics I think I've heard in Time for Bedlam. It seems like an attempt at a political song, but it's so incredibly clumsy imagery. Like sucking my milk from the venomous tit of the state is just like I had to check to see that I actually heard what I thought I heard. I was like, is that what he said? Yep, that's what he said. It's so cheesy that it makes it impossible to take it seriously or even really focus on the song. Like that's all I could focus on. And overall, I am really noticing the cheesy lyrics more on this album than some of the past ones. Not sure that it means that they are necessarily worse than the past several, but it's standing out a lot more on this album for me for whatever reason. There are also a few cheesier production touches on this album that stand out more, some weird panning, vocal processing on Birds of Prey, as well as in some other spots. Musically, it's pretty similar to what they've been doing for a while, so the small elements that I dislike are standing out a lot more then maybe they would if the rest of this catalog at this point was more interesting to me. This just feels like more of the same, but worse, and ultimately just very meh. And the cover of Roadhouse Blues at the end feels entirely unnecessary. Like, we did not need that. So it's another 2.5 for me. Number 18 is Rapture of the Deep. Again, I don't like this producer that they had for these two albums. Money Talks is notable since it shows Ian Gillan's widest vocal range on a recording, apparently, I read, which is at least something to say about its song, this song. Otherwise, it's just okay. Girls Like That is extremely repetitive to the point of feeling like a nothing burger of a song. Not a fan of the vocal production on Clearly Quite Absurd. I think Ian sounds rather muted and kind of weak, and it sounds like something in the mixing and just a lot of the messing around that they've been doing. Ultimately, this is totally fine for an album by a band at this point in their career. There's nothing here that I would consider embarrassing necessarily, or even anything that stands out as being on the cringy side. I'm happy that they don't really lean into production trends of this era that likely would not have suited them. But on the flip side of that, I don't really hear anything that stands out as especially good either. As an album, it's pretty much just another one that goes in one ear and out the other. And like I said a couple of times, I'm not a huge fan of Michael Bradford's production. I think that both this and Bananas sounded more limp and flat than they really should have, which is not an issue which I had with that I had with the previous two albums before that. And I think this contributes a bit to my indifference, but I also wouldn't say it's the only issue. The songs really just don't have much about them that make them stand out either. So it's another 2.5 star album. Number 17 is Slaves and Masters. Immediately stands out as clearly being made in 1990 production wise, although not necessarily egregiously so on the first song anyway. If not for John Lord's organ, though, appearing at times, I'm not sure that I would even recognize this as a Deep Purple album, since it really makes me think more of early 80s Rainbow, thanks to Jolyn Turner being there and never on another Deep Purple album at any other point. I like the solo on The Cut Runs Deep, but I'm not sure that I would say it totally fits there. Seems to fit better on the next song, though. Perhaps my biggest issue with this is that it's just relatively generic. It has that quality of sounding like an album that could have been made by anyone at this point in time. And it's always difficult for these veteran acts to be distinctive in a time where production trends don't really jive with their core sound. They found a balance on Perfect Strangers, but less so here. And it also doesn't help that there's a vocalist here that appears on no other album from the band. So I wouldn't say that I thought anything about this that was really offensive to me, but very much a product of its time. Very light 3 stars. So I guess I'm into the sea of threes now.
Nice, nice. I promise we like this band. It's just it's tough. Uh,
Yeah,
pr
it's kind of like it bottoms out and then it just kind of skyrockets at a point for me
Pretty much.
anyway.
Yeah, pretty much, honestly. Number 16 equals one. This is the exact same album that I just talked about, and the one I'm gonna talk about next. 2.5 stars. Number 15, Whoosh. I got nothing to say. All of these later period albums are exactly the fucking same. That's the issue. They follow similar structures too. So they aren't even creative in their album making process. It has a little bit better guitar and key work, I guess, but outside of that, it's just like kinda better. Just don't care about this era of the band. I'm gonna blow your mind. 2.5 stars. Number 14, I have The Battle Rages On. Another fine album. It's not really noteworthy or remarkable one way or the other. I don't have much to add about these. The performances are solid. Gillan still sounds good here. I just think my issue with the Gillan era is even at its best, I think that the songs at their core just aren't that well written. And to clarify by this, I mean the lyrics. I mean the actual songwriting. I don't mean like the guitars and whatnot, because obviously fucking Blackmore's there and Blackmore's going crazy. Love him. But it's just what I gravitate towards a lot in music is lyrics, and Deep Purple are not a lyrical band. So inherently, there's kind of like a ceiling on how much I like some of this stuff. I'm at a very light 3 stars for The Battle Rages On, but I mean, same shit, different toilet. You know how it goes. So there we go.
And see, lyrics are not necessarily the top of my list of importance. So I think when the music is better, I'm able to kind of, unless they're really bad, I can just kind of, they're fine, they're serviceable. But anyway, so number 16 is Now What? This is actually my favorite late period one. For what that's worth. It's immediately apparent that this is musically more muscular sounding than the last couple albums. Having Bob Ezrin at the helm seems to really help the sound for this album. I got tired of him after this, but this album I was kind of like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air. The only quibble I still have is that Ian's voice sounds a bit buried, and that I also don't think his voice has the power it once had. That could be part of the problem, and they're trying to overcompensate for it. Out of Hand is a highlight, heavy and interesting. Above and Beyond is a nice tribute to John Lord. There's a nice quality in Ian's voice on this song. You can feel that it's really coming from the heart as a tribute to him. And Uncommon Man is another tribute for him, inspired by Fanfare of the Common Man, which is a classical composition from Aaron Copland. I think that overall, this album is a pretty discernible step up from the previous two albums for me. For one thing, the songs feel more spirited and inspired musically, but at the same time, I wouldn't call this especially essential. It's better, and there are some nice moments, but I also wouldn't say many of the individual songs really stand out too prominently. Still, if I had to choose a post 2000 album to listen to, it would easily be this one. So it's 3 stars. Next, I have House of Blue Light. I think this album signals the beginning of a period where they try a bunch of different sounds with varying degrees of success. This sounds a bit more like how I initially expected Perfect Strangers to sound before I heard it. This was kind of more what I was expecting from that one. I'd say that it overall still avoids sounding too 80s, although sometimes the keyboard sounds make me question that sentence. But the problem is that for the most part, I don't think the songs are as strong here as they were in the previous album. I also can't seem to shake the feeling that everything sounds slightly more like treading water on this album. And at no point is any of it really bad, though. It's pretty well the definition of a decent album with serviceable songs and good performances. It's perfectly listenable. It's just not very memorable or engaging. And of course, we get our name female song with Mitzi Dupree, which is another bizarre set of lyrics from Ian Gillan involving a woman's name that does not sound like a real name that someone would have. But at least he's not asking her when she lost her virginity this time, so it's a little bit better. I will say Dead or Alive closes out the album well. I like that energetic guitar riff on that one, so 3 stars for this. And then number 14 is the Book of Taliesin from 1968. Listen, Learn, and Read On is an energetic opener, but also has a bit of a theme song kind of feel. This album follows a similar template to the debut, although I will commend them for not having the instrumental open the album this time. I feel like the Kentucky Woman cover really feels unnecessarily drawn out to the point where the song feels longer than it really is. Not really a fan of their version of We Can Work It Out. I appreciate that they attempt to make it their own, but I just don't really care for the results. Anthem is a pretty song, and I like the solo section which includes some nice strings and a cool guitar solo. But the song itself is not particularly memorable. Not really sure that they need to draw out the cover of River Deep Mountain High either. Even if I do like the way that they do the chorus, I think they kind of draw it out a little too long as a song. And as I said before, they follow a similar template to the debut here. I just don't think the result is an improvement or particularly compelling. It's fine, when it's on, and there's nothing disagreeable about it, but it is an entirely inessential album from my perspective. I'm not really that high on the Rod Evans era anyway, but this is my least favorite of the three, which means I will never choose to listen to it for any reason other than to be a completist. So, 3 stars for that.
Interesting. Probably the biggest disagreement I'm gonna have with you as of yet, but I mean, I don't like it that much, so it's fine. Number 13, I have Abandon. Well, nothing overtly remarkable, I'd say. That they have a lot of weaker records, so it's number 13. There's not much to say though. I think Morse really shreds on both this and Perpendicular though. Most of the time you don't fucking notice because these records are so nothing. But like on these, I think that he really gets to shine and showcases that he is a really good player and was honestly a solid fit. And I think especially on this record, the organ is at its best it's been in a while. I just think generally speaking, the songs they just feel like sort of whatever hard rock to me, which is what it is. So number 13. This is a goofy one. And number 12, I have Bananas. Let's make this very clear. I don't really like it, but I mean, I think it's certainly better than anything they did in the last fucking 20 years. Morris is still showing off here. The organ sounds pretty good. It's the last record I think Gillan can sing half a damn for, so that's worth something. And while the songwriting blows, I mean, it always blows. So I don't really have any issues here. Solid 3 stars. And at number 11, just missing my top 10 record and an era I was much higher on before I went back to it. I have the debut, Shades of Deep Purple, and I have it at 3 stars. I really dig the guitar work on here. I think that the organ's really cool as well. And I like Rod Evans a lot as a singer. I think he really fits this cool kind of like psych thing they have going on. And I think that he works well for that. You start to notice the flaws in Rod Evans a lot better on something like the self-titled, I think. I really like their cover of Help. I think it's fairly interesting. But past that, I don't think that there's a lot of like truly outstanding stuff outside of probably Hush. There's a good bit of promise here. It's just not quite there. So 3 stars for Shades of Deep Purple. I'm almost at good albums. I'm almost there.
Right. So number 13, going to the 70s for the first time with Who Do We Think We Are, which I'm sure is not a surprise. The album opens with an absolute banger in Women from Tokyo, and then everything goes to hell. Much is often said about Mary Long, thanks to the really cringeworthy lyrics. I do find the result rather amusing because it's such a swing and a miss. I get the point that Ian was trying to make here, but he went about it in such a bizarre way. How did you lose your virginity, Mary Long? When will you lose your stupidity, Mary Long? Is quite a chorus. Like, I don't know why multiple people didn't stop that from making a record. But anyway, whatever. They were tired, obviously. It doesn't help that it isn't that great of a song either. So it's the main thing that you end up focusing on because you just cannot think about anything else. I'm also not sure what's going on with some of his vocal inflections on the song. It's pretty funny. The rest of the album doesn't end up being outright bad, but it's missing the spark of their better albums from around the same time. I found overall the songs are not memorable, aside from the two I mentioned. You can really tell that they're tired and forcing it, which they have said multiple times that they were, and it really comes through. By all accounts, they have been better off. They would have been better off waiting longer to make the next album because this just ends up being entirely mediocre. So 3 stars for that. Number 12 is The Battle Rages On, the last album with the Mark II lineup. They're once again up with the modern times. Everyone sounds really good here, albeit with production that reflects the times it was made in. Starts off with a good amount of energy. Anya has a nice intro, transitions into something more symphonic than I expected. This album isn't reinventing the wheel, but it is a pretty solid hard rock album with energetic, catchy songs, and it's an easy listen. Like with Perfect Strangers, they managed to sound current without sounding like it's ill-fitting, so that I think is a good thing. I do prefer Perfect Strangers, obviously, because I haven't mentioned it yet, but I think this was a decent effort. 3 stars. And number 11 is actually the same as yours. It's Shades of Deep Purple. Starting your debut album with an instrumental is an interesting choice. Enjoyable enough song though, but I just think that's pretty funny. Hush stands out in comparison for sure. John Lord's organ is the star of the show, which is pretty well true for the majority of the album. One More Rainy Day is pleasant, but almost sounds like it belongs on a different album than this one. Mandrake Root feels more like the song that hints towards their future sound in the Mark II era. Their cover of Help is an interesting take on the song. I wouldn't say I love it, but it's kind of cool. It's slowed down and reimagined. The organ and guitar solos are nice. Elements of their Hey Joe cover makes me think of Am I Evil by Diamond Head that comes later, especially at the end. This pretty I feel like that was an inspiration for sure for future metal bands. Ultimately, this is a solid debut from a band that would take many twists and turns in the coming years, and a good introduction to some great musicians. There's several covers, but they're done creatively, so you don't mind too much. Their songwriting would definitely evolve in the coming years on the originals, and they aren't the strongest here. Rod Evans is a good singer, like you said, especially for the style that they're doing here, but not to the level of the powerhouses that we see later. I'm generally not going to choose this album or this era to listen to if I want to hear Deep Purple, but it's enjoyable enough when it's on. It's inoffensive, so it's a light 3.5 for me.
Gotcha. I think for the most part, this is a fairly standard top 10 that I have here. Maybe like one or two picks that some people wouldn't put in there because they like to act like the new stuff was any good. But it is what it is. Probably a little low for this one for some people, but I don't really care. Number 10, I have Perfect Strangers. I think this is pretty good. Solid guitar parts. I like the way they work the synth into their sound. Gillan sounds great on here. Almost makes me want to check out some of the actual like Gillan band stuff to see how those are, but I think I'm good on Deep Purple adjacent material for a little bit right now. So we'll get there in due time. Doesn't help that I also dived Rainbow doing this, so that was fun. Sure. I just don't find a lot of it to be super noteworthy, which is really my issue with Purple as a whole. I think consistently their work is good. I generally find them to be fun to listen to, but it's like, do they have any of really my like favorite songs? Not really. That's sort of where I where my issue comes in here. It's just a solid hard rock record from the mid 80s. I mean, I don't have too much to personally remark on because I'm not that personally attached to it, but three and a half stars. I think Perfect Strangers is a perfectly good record. So they have 10 good albums. Good job, guys.
I don't think anybody would be too upset by that placement, but I don't know. We'll see, I guess.
I I have no clue how people view this band. I just know In Rock and Machine Head are like generally considered the top two, and then from
Yeah.
there it's a clusterfuck.
Yeah, I think it's pretty inconsistent.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think my 10 is going to be one that people love either, so might take the heat off of you. It ends up being abandoned. It just kind of where it falls and everything. Um, Yeah, I think that it's solid. I think it's good. Any Fool Know That is a catchy opener in spite of its title's absolutely atrocious spelling. It's a good song. It continues on the energy of the previous album. Don't Make Me Happy is a nice ballad with some welcome organ from John Lord. Has some classic vibes melding with modern styles but I think it works. Fingers to the Bone is another nice ballad. Seems to be something that they do well in this era. I like how the keyboard synth blends with the guitar as a melodic hook. This era was a good one for the band. It found them working with a new time period from their heyday and sounding fresh without sounding like they were chasing trends or trying to sound like something they weren't, which was a big problem in the 90s for a lot of bands. You can tell this album was made in the 90s, but I don't think it really sounds like it's desperately trying to prove it. It's just a straight rocking album, and I appreciate that. That helps it stand out from the few albums before Perpendicular that did sound like they were chasing trends a little bit more. And although definitely not as egregiously as some of their peers did, though, of course. This album isn't quite as strong as the previous one on the song front, but it is an easy and enjoyable listen as well as a worthy addition to their discography. So it's not going to blow you away. I just think it's solid. So it's a 3.5 star album.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fair. I'm a little lower on it, but I mean, I think I'm a little lower across the board, so what difference does it make? I can actually switch my list around a little bit here. What I had at number 8, I'm going to switch to number 9 here, which is self-titled Deep Purple. It's still not incredible or anything, but I do think that you get some growth from the debut, which we'll note because I haven't talked about Taliesin yet. I went back after I listened to the records on streaming. So Talisman was actually the last record I listened to for this. So I wrote this only having heard Shades. So I didn't get the middle piece of the puzzle. I didn't complete the Triforce. Fuck. Oh well. And while I liked Rod on the first two records, I wrote that. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I liked Rod. I like Rod here, but I think he doesn't fit here because they're actually fucking rocking out. It's not as much muddled in that late 60s psych. However, I do still like the sound. I'd say Wyatt and Rosemary is probably the best example for what they're going for here. It's just a cool, almost where they're going to get. It's just not quite all the way there. And I like Taliesin more. So, solid 3.5 stars. There you go. That was rough.
So the self-titled Deep Purple. This is the best album of the Rod Evans era for me, pretty easily. Still not anywhere near the level of their best stuff coming up, but an improvement nonetheless for me. It gets rid of the tired template of the first two albums and move things more into the hard rock direction, as you were saying. Their songwriting has improved quite a bit here, but it also helps things which also helps things. But I think that it also becomes apparent that they are make the right choice by switching gears to a new vocalist, as Rod is clearly not the best fit for the style that they're going into, as you also mentioned. Even with the improvement in their songwriting here, my favorite song on this album is still a cover, which is Lelena and Donovan cover. I just think it suits Rod well and is a good showcase for his voice. Aside from that, everything maintains a consistent level of quality, but there aren't many songs that truly stand out. The album closes out with the epic April, which has some really great sections and some really great guitar playing from Richie Blackmore, of course, but it feels like it's probably drawn out longer than it needs to be as a song. The symphonic elements are nice too, but it feels a bit at odds with the rest of the album. This feels like the transitional record that it is, and it serves as a nice bridge between this era and Mark II. And it's good to hear for interest's sake, and it has some nice moments, even if it's not an all-time favorite album. So it's 3.5 for me as well.
Fair enough. The one I switched around, number 8 for me now, I have Perpendicular. This is by far the best thing that they've made since the 70s. I don't think any other record even really comes close. This record coming directly after Perfect Strangers makes sense to me, which I don't know why I wrote that because it doesn't. I guess I had already forgotten about the two records, so we're doing really good here. I think it's going for something fairly similar, just better in my opinion. It's them going back to more of the classic rock sound that made them good in the first place. Who would have fucking imagined that was the move? Great guitar work from Steve Morse. I think he fills in the slot from Blackmore incredibly well. Love the guitar, love the organ tones and the sick drumming on here, all accompanied by Gillan. I mean, he's sounding the best since Machine Head, I think, on this record. He is going crazy here. It's not my favorite record in the world, but it's a pretty strong 3.5 stars. I think it's easily my favorite thing that they had done since the 70s and was a really pleasant surprise after fucking Battle Rages On. I don't know.
Yeah, there was actually three albums in between Perfect Strangers and that one.
I couldn't even make a claim to remember a single song from any of those. They're fucking.
Or that they
I
exist.
evidently so. I mean, fuck.
Well, there you go.
We did.
So my number eight, this is where I might piss some people off. It is Fireball. Um, I mean, I think it's really good. We'll get into it. But anyway, the self-titled opener is a barn burner. Kicks things off with a lot of energy. It's a great opener, but it's also unfortunate that it's my favorite song on the album and it's out of the way so quickly. So that kind of isn't ideal. Which isn't to say that the rest of this is bad, of course. The songs on the first side are rocking and they have some catchy hooks in amongst the jamming. I like how Strange Kind of Woman has that part that slows down before the guitar solo. That's really cool. Closing the side with the more country flavored Anyone's Daughter is a really interesting move. And I think that it's a really creative change of pace that is unexpected. And I like that about it. I don't know that I totally love this song, but I respect them for mixing it up. But the second side of the album is where this album falls off a bit for me. I wouldn't say that it falls off entirely, but I wouldn't say I feel as much connection with the songs on it. And I think that's often what ends up making this album slightly more on the low side for me when I think of the discography because that's how it closes out. It seems like backloaded album seems to leave a better impression sometimes if you're going to have one or the other. For example, Fools has some cool elements, especially on the more rocking sections with the vocals, but it also has a lot of sections that are more sprawling and not particularly engaging for me. I'm not sure the feet pieces totally fit together either, which leaves the song feeling a bit awkward. Ultimately, this album is a step down from the two it is sandwiched between, and I know the band thought so too. It's a shame because it has such a cool album cover. I love the album cover, and I really wish I liked it more because I like the album cover so much. But it's a light four, even still. So it's a good album.
Yeah, I mean, I think I share very similar sentiments. It's just higher on my list. So how dare you? Number seven, Book of Taliesin. It's my favorite of the Rod Evans era, and dare I go to call it a very solid release. You see things treading into a bit more of a hard rock style compared to the psych stylings of the debut, which I think works pretty well. Do I have anything to say about individual songs? No, because it's not on streaming for me, so I had to watch a full album on YouTube. So, shit out of luck there. Rod sounds pretty good, and I think it's just a pretty good balance between what they started out and what they became as. I just think it has a very similar stance to the self-titled. I just like it more. So, there you go. 3.5 stars, number seven. Book of Taliesin.
Yeah, it's not on streaming for me either. There's a bunch of random ones, which is annoying.
It's weird.
But what can you do? Number seven for me is Perpendicular. I think it starts very strong. I like the new guitar playing style from Steve Morse on his first album with the band, of course. It sounds modern for that time, but not in a way that makes it sound dated. I really like the first few songs. Sometimes I feel like Screaming has some great sounding guitar on it, and it's such a satisfying build on the choruses and the song as the song goes on. I like the more acoustic folky arrangement on the Aviator. It's a nice switch up that they do nicely. One thing I like about this album, especially for a later period album, is the fact that it is quite a bit of a variety between the songs, like in the styles, and it does that without compromising on cohesiveness. And this is such a big point, especially where later everything kind of ends up being a mash of songs on their later albums. But this album goes against that. It has a lot more of a just a lot more variety. Anyway, ultimately, as an album that I had heard some good things about, it ends up really delivering on the promise. So that was good. The whole band sounds inspired and full of energy, which makes for an album that is an easy listen despite being on the longer side because it was the 90s after all. I feel like John Lord's talents are also utilized a lot better on this album than they had been on some of the more recent albums at this point. Somebody Stole My Guitar feels like a bit of a throwback lyrically to Smoke on the Water, in that it seems like a story of something that happened to them around the time that the album was recorded, which is kind of a fun little callback. The album closer, Perpendicular Waltz, feels like an interesting blend of the 70s and the 90s, which could be due to the prominent organ, but it's cool nonetheless. So this is also a strong 4 stars for me.
Nice. Top six, we mostly share all of them. This is where I'm gonna start making people mad though. So number six, I have In Rock. I think that this is clearly a step in the right direction. They just aren't quite all the way there. I love about half the record. I think Speed King is a ripping opener, Child in Time's a classic, and I think Into the Fire is fantastic. Past that, they're good, but they just don't really stand out to me that much. I think Gillan is a massive step forward for the group. I mean, if imagine fucking Rod Evans trying to do Child in Time. That'd be silly. And Blackmore's guitars are crunchier and heavier than they'd ever been before. It's a band really finding their sound, I feel, but they've got a lot of room to grow still. 4 stars, though. I think it's really good. And funnily enough, during this exercise, we span In Rock in the 1001 album's generator thing, and I actually liked it more on the re-listen. But you're still number six, so should have been better.
Well, it's not, I mean, number six isn't that bad.
Eh, I mean, not top five, and most people have it one, but maybe
Yeah.
I'm just trying to start stuff with the 3 people that will watch this.
Well, I'm not going to give away anything just yet. It's not my number six, but anyway, my number six is Perfect Strangers. The return of Mark II, and the longest gap between albums from the band to date, which is a bit crazy when you consider how long that they have been around. The first time I heard it, I was not sure what to expect, especially with it being a totally new era and an era where the prevailing sound was quite removed from what this lineup especially was doing in the 70s. I definitely expected it to be a lot more cringy. The 80s were often an interesting and sometimes scary time for 70s bands trying to adjust to the new trends and sounds. However, I think at least on this album, they make that transition quite well. It does sound sleeker and more modern to that time period, but it feels like a relatively natural transition where they don't sound like they're trying to be someone who they are not and rely too much on the trends of the time. It still feels like Mark II Deep Purple, just in a new era. There are some strong and catchy songs here as well, like Nobody's Home and Mean Streak. Really like those ones, they stand out a lot. This is not an album that reinvents the wheel or anything, which I suppose in some ways sets the tone for the next 40 years, but it still feels fresh enough here to work well. The band sounds refreshed from the time apart, and it makes for a strong album. It was a really pleasant surprise the first time I heard it, and one that I still enjoy going back to. I've heard this one several times now, so it is also 4 stars for me.
Gotcha. I'm really glad, mind you, I knew this was going to happen, but I'm really glad that this is the case because at my number five, it's probably the most contentious Deep Purple record. People love it, people hate it. Be better because it's really good. Number five, Come Taste the Band. This is actually what I was expecting to be my number one going into this, but you live and you learn, I suppose. It's a really weird record, I think, for me to discuss because this one and the one before it are really close, but the one before isn't going to show up for a little bit, so funny how that works out. The Mark IV lineup had a lot to live up to, and fucking smashed it because Tommy Bolin's a goddamn monster, and Pace and Lord are still really goddamn good. And Glenn Hughes and David Coverdale, I'm sorry, they blow Gillen out of the water for me. I don't think it's close. They are by far my favorite element of this band. I absolutely adore them. But the curse of Deep Purple shows itself here because I still just don't think the songs are that great. They're not awful or anything that I think like dooms the record. I'm still at 4 stars to clarify. It's very good, but from a lyrical level, I just don't have much to really grip into, which is a big issue for me. What does matter though is the songs fucking shred. So I like them. So there you go. Dealer likely my favorite track on here, but I don't know. I'm at 4 stars. I think it's really good. I really wish they had another record with Bolin. I think that would have just been like by far their best. It is what it is, though. It's still very good. It's just makes me sad about what happened to Tommy Bolin. So number five, Come Taste the Band, 4 stars.
Yeah, I really thought that was going to be your number one or number two.
Me
So
too.
interesting. So number five is where I have Deep Purple and Rock. So I guess we're both gonna piss everybody off.
Yeah,
So there
take
you
that,
go.
Pete Pardo.
Uh, I still think it's great though. My whole top five is great. So yeah. The album comes barreling right out the gate with Speed King, like you said. You know you're in for something completely different than the albums that came before. I cannot imagine being 1970 and being a fan of the previous three albums and then putting this on me like, holy shit, like it would have been quite a change. Would have been either awesome or horrible, I guess, depending on your perspective, but it would have been a change. Ian Gillan's vocals bring a new flavor to the band, and the hard rock sound revitalizes them all. Child in Time is, of course, an epic that showcases everyone's talents in ways that put the spotlight on every member of the band just the right amount. No one's contribution overstays its welcome or overshadows. It's just perfect. This song is the centerpiece of the album and grounds all the other songs. I think it's well placed at the end of side one. Side two brings things back around to an energetic hard rocking sound. It's easy to focus on John Lord's organ, Ian Gillan's vocals, and Richie Blackmore's guitar, and with good reason. But I think Ian Pace also has some absolutely killer drumming moments on here. That really stood out to me, especially going back to the album. I appreciate albums from this era that find ways to showcase great drumming without it feeling like overkill, because there was a lot of temptation towards that for a lot of bands. I think this is a great album of muscular hard rock, maybe with a bit more of a focus on musicianship than catchy songs, but I think they make it work. That isn't to say that these songs aren't memorable. Speed King is a great single, and even the sprawling epic of Child in Time has many hooks. This sound suits them better than any of the previous era, and I think Ian is a better fit for the band. Generally, everything sounds more comfortable here than it did before, so this is where I go up to 4.5 stars.
Nice, nice. My number four, possibly weird that I have this above in rock, I have Fireball. To clarify, very close. I like them pretty much the same, but I give the edge to Fireball because I really like the title track. It's so cool. It's probably my favorite. No, it's actually not because we'll get to that later. I remember now. It's almost like I listened to this record a month and a half ago and don't remember shit about it. But it is what it is. I'm not super crazy about the more standard Deep Purple rockers on here. But Anyone's Daughter is fantastic. I really like what I think makes Fireball work a lot for me is I think this is the Gillan era really experimenting and trying a lot of different things that you don't get from in rock. You don't get it from like the comeback stuff. They tried here, so I appreciate that. I like the almost country or like folk tinges you get on parts of this record, and Gillan really nails it all. The Mule is another really good standout to me, and I think it closes incredibly well with No One Came. It's just a damn solid hard rock record that can do other things. So I like it more. 4 stars. Really good stuff.
Actually, a bit lower than I thought it was going to be, so there you go.
Ooh.
Just the way you were talking, I don't know. I thought maybe you'd have it like number two or one or something.
I mean, let's not get silly. I
Yeah,
gotta have my boys at the top.
true. Well, okay. Well, we'll see. Anyway, number four is where I have come taste the band. And like you said, it's a shame that this is the only album that we got from Mark III or Mark IV, sorry. But at least we got one. Tommy Bolin's guitar playing brings a new flavor to the band, and it is a captivating element since he's coming from a totally different background than anybody they've had before, with that fusion background. So it brings a totally new flavor. The funky breakdown on Getting Tighter is cool, and I like how it blends with Bolin's guitar playing and the harder rocking bass of the songs. Just really great. It's unfortunate that we don't get to hear as much from Glenn Hughes on vocals on this album since he had some health issues at the time, but where he does contribute, it's great this time around, especially is where it just such an album highlight, along with Tommy Bolin's instrumental Ode to G kind of tacked onto it. There's just such a great song and just a great moment for Glenn as well. Um, Also cool to hear Tommy Bolin sing on Dealer a bit. I like his voice. I like his solo records a lot, so it's cool to hear him on here. I do miss the joint singing between David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes that we heard on the previous two albums since it's only really on one song. But this album has other differences that make it unique and enjoyable, as mentioned before. I think the blend of funk with hard rock and Tommy Bolin's style gives this album a really engaging sound that stands out and really inspired future bands. That's one thing that really stood out to me when I was listening to this just the other day again. It was like, wow, this really is a bit of a template for a lot of stuff that we saw in like the 80s and 90s, especially. One thing that I really like about the Mark III and Mark IV era is that each album in that era has a very distinct identity of its own, which makes the albums themselves very memorable. And they're just so like whereas the albums blend together so much in the later periods, especially, it's so cool to have this part where it's like each album is just so distinctive. And this is no exception. So it's 4.5 stars for me.
Nice, nice. Yep, fully agree. And I think that's part of the issue with just the later period, especially, is they all have their own thing going for them, as you said, well, and then just all of the later records are just the same shit over and over. So it's like
Yeah.
you were so good at doing stuff.
Yeah.
What are you
Mixing it up.
doing?
Yeah.
Number three, Machine Head. I mean, how I've been talking. I mean, this is pretty obvious. I did enjoy Fireball, and I did enjoy In Rock a good deal, but I think this is clearly better than those records. For one, it's heavier, so it's getting the Martin Popoff seal of approval. The songs are better, and they just feel a bit more like a proper unit here. Ian Pace's drumming here, I know this is especially killer. Highway Star is an exceptional opener. Spoke on the Water is a classic, albeit, I mean, tired of it because it's fucking smoke on the water. I think Lazy is a really cool track as well. My only real qualm is I think maybe I'm a Leo is kind of like whatever after coming after Highway Star, but overall, it's a very strong hard rock record across the board. Much stronger 4 stars for this. I think it's really good. Damn good.
All right. So, well, my number three, I thought I would have higher than you for sure, but I guess not. It is Stormbringer. This album is one that I've gone back to the most during the process of making this list. Um, these top three are very close for me, so it was hard to place them. I've always really liked this album, but it became a bit addictive for me these last several weeks, well, months, I guess, that we've been working on this. I really loved the self-titled opener. It gets stuck in my head a lot. I think that's one thing here that gets really underrated about this album is the songs. There's a lot of great songs on this album. And I've seen a lot of dismissive attitudes about their songwriting, but I think this album especially is there a lot of memorable songs with some great hooks. I mean, I don't necessarily mean lyrically, I just mean like the songwriting core, musically. Stormbringer, Holy Man, Lady Double Dealer, Highball Shooter immediately come to mind. Like you see those titles, you know those songs, they're right in your head. There's also a lot to be said about the increase of funkiness on this album. And often it's a negative thing from people, but I really like it. I think it really works for them. I think both David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes have this swagger as vocalists to pull it off, as well as Glenn as a bassist. I think they all really make it work. And I also think that they both sound especially good on this album. Maybe some of the pushback comes back down to the fact that Richie doesn't like this element coming into their sound, and that's why he leaves the band. But I think that it works fine, and I think he works fine within it as well. I think he may be a little too hard on himself, but I think it blended into their sound that in a way that feels natural. And this was a band that was always evolving in this era as their personnel changed. So it made sense for them to do something different here. It made sense for them to not sound like Mark II and to sound like something new because they had new people. So I think it's great. I really enjoy it, so I don't really care what about the pushback. So I actually have bumped it up to 5 stars. So my number three.
I'm surprised that you thought I would be less high on that one. To clarify, Stormbringer is my number two, and it's not quite the tour de force that Burn was, but still fucking great. And the reason why I'm surprised that you didn't think I'd be as high on this one is the more overt R&B and soul influences you get on here because of Hughes, which
True.
I'm a fucking sucker for that shit.
Hmm.
I gotta do a soul artist one of these days. Like Sade is the closest I've gotten, and I mean that's only like tangentially if you really think about it. But besides the point, Deep Purple. Title track is one of the best rockers in general. It's actually the song to really get me interested in Deep Purple. So take that, Gillen. Coverdale and Hughes both sound out of this world here. Really, that entire run of the first 4 tracks are just like, I mean, it doesn't get better than that except for Burn. The only reason I'm not at 4.5 stars is like, I mean, Lady Double Dealer is just kind of whatever in comparison to the rest of it for me. So I don't know. I just don't think it's a very interesting cut. I just think it's a damn strong 4 star record. I love the Mark III lineup. I love Hughes, love Coverdale. So it's my number two, Stormbringer. Really cool record. I actually like how sort of not Coverdale, how Blackmore sort of plays against them on here. I think it's interesting because you can tell he doesn't want that. He doesn't want
Yeah.
those elements there, but he works so well. So it's like, grow up and fucking do it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I still
love
think
the
it
record.
works as a result. Like if you don't know necessarily about the backstory, I mean, it's
Mhm.
still a great result. And there's a something I read about Glenn Hughes still saying that he did a great job even if he doesn't like it. And I thought that was really sweet.
Uh, there's a reason why Glenn Hughes is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So my number two is Machine Head. So I guess we have the same number one, which is also something I'm not sure I totally expected. But anyway,
I had a
uh,
feeling.
yeah. The killer opener with Highway Star, of course. This is a song I loved before I knew many other Deep Purple songs. I always preferred it to Smoke on the Water when it came to the big songs that I knew before I'd listened to albums or anything. I love Richie's solo on this. You can almost visualize it. Like it's just so cool. Like it's like it paints a picture almost, which is a pretty amazing thing when you think about it. Pictures of Home has so many cool moments where everyone gets a little time to shine, complete even with a bass solo, which is really neat. I always appreciate their skill at pulling that off within a great song. It's become one of my favorites on the album. And this is what I consider Mark II's crowning achievement, of course, since it's number two on the whole list. This is an album where I think they really effectively blend good songwriting with their technical prowess, showing off their skill as musicians while still delivering a killer bunch of songs. It really is the best of both worlds, and they sound very energized and inspired throughout the album. There's an electricity that you can feel, and I always feel a little bit of an excitement listening to it. Even Smoke on the Water, which I and most people have heard thousands of times at this point because it's just, ubiquitous, but in the album it's propped up and electrified within that context. So I don't mind it within this full piece. Anytime I listen to this album, it's clear why it's a classic. Space Truckin' closes things out perfectly, making Highway Star and it the perfect bookends to the album. I also love the album cover. I think it looks like something that belongs in the 90s almost. It doesn't even really look, it looks like almost like looking ahead to the future a bit. So that's pretty neat. So it's also 5 stars, of course.
Nice. Well, it's officially been declared by us two that Burn is the best Deep Purple album. And simply put, this fucking blows everything else out of the water for me. I think this is a clear number one. And as much as I do respect and enjoy the Mark II lineup, fuck you. Mark III wins. The production on Burn is absolutely outstanding. Guitars are just so vibrant and in your face all the time. Pace's drumming's exceptional. And I love there's a little addition of synth at points on here that really play with the organ in such a cool way. But frankly, Gillan isn't half the singer of Coverdale or Hughes to me, who frankly, for my money, might be the best fucking hard rock singers of the era. Both have such power and sort of just are able to provide such an edge to their sound with Coverdale's more bluesy roots and you get Hughes having such a soulful delivery at points. On top of that, well-written songs. Burns great, Sail Away, You Fool New One, Mistreated are all my favorites up to this point. This record's an absolute titan, and it's not to be discredited by any purple purist that might put the Gillan stuff at the top. I think that this record fucking slams. I think it is one of the best of the era, possibly one of the best hard rock records of the 70s. I'm at a very strong 4.5 stars for Burn. This shit slams. Love it.
It burns.
No, that's too obvious.
So yeah, also my number one. Title track is a killer opener that comes blazing right out the gate, and we get our first taste of David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes together on vocals. And right away, I love the way they play off of each other. It's just like right out the gate. I also particularly love John Lord's solo on this song. It's very otherworldly. It's very cool. The addition of Glenn and David bring the energy and excitement back to the band. And overall, I think the songs here are catchy and memorable in a way that was missing on Who Do We Think We Are, of course. Um, in this era, I think it's cool how each lineup tweak brings that new flavor to the band, as I've been saying, and their sound. And I realize that's not how everyone views it, but I think that is a strength. And this, again, is another demonstration of that. I love the bit of funkiness brought into Sail Away, as for example. It's a slinky rockin' vibe and full of swagger. The effect of Glenn and David singing together on You Fool No One is super cool, and I love the drumming on that song. Right from the first time I heard this album, I thought it was great. And it was cool because it was all new to me at that time. I don't even know that I necessarily expected it because I had never heard anything from this era, even at that point. So I just love the energy, and I'm a really big fan of the vocals from both David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. But once again, I think everyone here has some great moments on this album. Lots of great solos from John Lord and Richie Blackmore, as well as lots of cool drumming from Ian Pace. It's just fantastic. I think all of my top 5 albums are great, and I'm happy to play them all at any time. But this is often the one I choose first, which gives it just a slight little edge. So it's another 5 star, of course.
Nice. We did it. We
Yeah.
talked about Deep Purple. So, any closing remarks, really?
Um, well, it's hard to one thing that I think going through the whole catalog really emphasizes is it's hard to necessarily say how you feel about the band as a whole. Because like I love my favorite albums, obviously. I have three 5-star albums and I would play them anytime. And when we were doing this, I was returning to those albums over and over and over and over again and really only, not listening to the other ones quite as much. Although in my top 10, those ones I revisited several times just to figure things out. But obviously, I mean, lesser stuff was not stuff. And this stuff I'm going to forget about. And like, I wouldn't buy it or I wouldn't, really. But yeah, so it makes it hard to say like where they land as a band, like how you consider that. But still, their great stuff is amazing. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, this is one of the trickier ones. It's just like figuring out how I feel about them as an artist, because well, quite frankly, I think they've fucking sucked since like 2003. So it's
mm,
like how do you really balance that, I guess becomes the question.
yeah.
And I guess we can burn all those later period records from our memory. There
But
we
I guess
go.
there's a lot of classic bands like that. I mean, the longer a band lasts, the more chance that there's going to be stuff at some point that you're not going to like nearly as much as their heyday. I mean, look at the Beach Boys.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I'm doing
they
them
have some
next.
fantastic top-notch albums, but then you've got like, Summer of Paradise. So, uh, it, but you can't necessarily knock that against them. So I guess you can't necessarily knock that against Deep Purple either. I mean, just look at the best, and so
Don't say
they're
that. Don't
definitely a titan of hard rock of the 70s, I will
for,
say,
for sure.
undoubtedly.
I guess this could be interesting. Who do you take in the 70s, Purple or Sabbath?
Oh my God. Well, I mean,
I mean, for me, it's easy, but
it would have to be Sabbath. I mean,
yeah,
they are, yeah.
yeah.
But
So,
I think they both were so pivotal and important to the future of the genre and every subgenre that came from it. So,
oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Well, that being said, I think that's a good way to end this, dunking on them once more. But, anyways, this was fun, obviously. Hope that you'll enjoy this. Check out Vanessa's channel. As I said, it's better. So, y'all have a good one.